This is Linda Lehrhaupt, and I'd like to welcome you to the Mindfulness-Based Teacher Project. Podcast number 3, Not Knowing is Most Intimate.
One of my favorite koans or teaching stories in the Zen tradition comes from a collection called the Book of Equanimity. The story goes that a student arrives at a meditation center and the teacher asks, "Where are you coming from?" And the student answers, "I am on pilgrimage. I wander aimlessly." And then the teacher asks, "Where are you going?" The student says, "I don't know." The teacher comments, "Not knowing is most intimate." I think this question of the teacher, "Where are you coming from?" can be seen on various levels. He could literally be asking, "Where have you just come from? What place?" And we have the expression also in English, "Where are you coming from?" which means, what's your background? What have you done in your life that's brought you to this point where you are? In that space of saying, "I don't know," the teacher goes on to ask, "Where are you going?" Well, we have talked about coming and going. Coming from a place where one thinks one knows, and going to a place where one doesn't know. What can that mean to us as teachers? One of the things that comes up a lot for some of our students who are working in professions where they have to do interviews with people or diagnose, doctors, psychologists, therapists, physiotherapists, teachers in schools, where there's some sort of, I have to size up this person before I can work with them. There's a real tendency to not see the people for who they are, but for who we think they are. We have all sorts of questionnaires where we ask people to fill in some aspects of their life stories, but is that really who they are? Can we meet a student without preconceptions, or at least be as aware as possible of preconceptions? Some of our psychotherapists tell us that the moment they lay eyes on someone, they're already looking for things that can give them cues about who a person is. When doctors look at past medical records of people as they're interviewing them, how much does that shape what they're actually taking in about somebody? How much space is left for being surprised? How much space is left for not knowing who and what the person is that is in front of us? If we say that's a chronic pain patient, or that person is depressed, or that person is having difficulty adjusting to life after illness, what does it say? Now, it doesn't mean that it's not helpful to have information about our students. In many ways, it's important. But can we see beyond those categories or descriptions that either are given to us about people or they give to us about themselves? Why is it so important to simply be with one another? And especially for the teacher. I think one aspect of that is that we often size up to begin with what we think a student is capable of. Do we think that they'll be able to go the distance? Do we think that they'll practice? Do they think we'll react negatively to our setting some boundaries? Or when they have resistance, do we think that it's not okay that they don't want to do the body scan or they don't want to sit for 45 minutes? What's going on? Well, I think that we are many times scared to be without clear-cut definitions of a situation. It's difficult to be in an open space and not have a map. But that map can often so limit what is possible to experience for oneself as a teacher and for a student. A lot of teachers say that they have difficulty with what we call inquiry or mindful dialogue. Many teachers say that they feel a pressure to ask questions, to fill spaces of silence that may occur. Or they feel a sense of inadequacy if they can't exactly know what to say to a student or in what direction they need to lead the discussion. But it's often exactly those moments of silence, those moments of no words, that tremendous potential for being truly intimate is possible. One thing it gives us is the opportunity to be intimate with our own fear of not being on top of things, of not being in control. Another is that it gives the student a chance to simply be in that quiet, that space where there's not so much pressure to have to say something, and that something can emerge out of that moment. Not knowing is most intimate, is not about blankness or absence. In fact, it's what we might sometimes call a pregnant pause. At the moment, there are birds outside my window who are chirping. It's early morning. The sun has just risen. And in between the space of a chirp, there's such a rich silence. Such a stillness of not knowing. In those moments of engaging in mindful dialogue with someone else, think of those pauses, not as the dark clouds gathering before the storm breaks, but simply the spaces between chirping. I've experienced that when I can be still and at peace in not knowing, when I let go of the idea that I have to control the discussion, then something truly sharing emerges, even if not much happens. Not knowing is most intimate can mean that it simply allows us to be in stillness with ourselves, with all that we are, with our condition, with our emotions, with our thoughts, with our breath. And moment after moment, connect and be in touch with what's happening or not happening. But there's not the pressure that something must unfold. There's a story about a young person who sees a cocoon and a butterfly inside and sees the movement and decides out of kindness that it will help the butterfly by opening the cocoon, cutting it open. The butterfly emerges and the young person is thrilled and seeing this beauty emerge from the darkness. The butterfly spreads its wings and is about to fly, and then it collapses and dies. The child is shocked and runs home and explains what has happened and is told that a butterfly has to struggle within the cocoon. It lays in waiting in stillness for a long time, but the very effort that it needs to emerge, the muscles and legs and wings that it has to bring into action in order to break out of the cocoon is what's necessary to give it the strength to survive, to grow and fly away. If we interrupt too early, then it doesn't have a chance to mature. I see parallels to that in this space of stillness, in the space of not filling the spaces with sound or comments or brilliant ideas, just allowing the silence to be. And even if we're feeling shaky and nervous and feeling that pressure, that we allow ourselves to be with that, allowing it to mature within ourselves, just like the butterfly within the cocoon. Not knowing is most intimate because it is a true knowing that emerges, a true knowing that is not based on preconceived ideas, is not driven by fear or by a need to be in charge. A true knowing that is not knowing manifesting in every moment. I have found this practice of being with not knowing to be one of the most difficult and one of the most rewarding, because it's a practice for both of us. I experience an intimacy and a depth that allows me to feel at home and to go on, not having to be prepared, but simply being prepared to be unprepared.
Thank you for listening to the Mindfulness-Based